I never hate my race, but until recently I didn't know history class was jacked completely. Found my new family with the team going free. My old family doesn't understand me, cause I am so pro-white. No coke, no Sprite, I am rolling with the public, gonna be more white. I saw them twist history right before my very eyes. Insurrection Day, it's in the book and it's all lies. But now I am alive and well to tell it. But will generations down the line be able to sell it? I've always been a thinker on the search for both sides, but they label me an outcast and they cannot tell me why. Guess I'm just a black sheep, white boy who doesn't hesitate to make a lot of fucking noise. I'm the black sheep, white boy, and I wouldn't change a thing if I ever had the choice. Cause the red's the color I bleed. Yes, we all do bleed red. I have to protect my family. Why does affirmative action make them not hire me? Even in the countries where I'm the minority. Is my rage just that awesome and no other could compete? Is that what the anti-whites are trying to tell me? Why am I always seen as such a threat? To the point they wanna strip me down till there's nothing left. Old friends from high school, man, I haven't kept one, but I got a new crew and it's where I belong. Cause if you ain't going free, you ain't rolling with me. And there are even anti-whites in my own family. But I am the one who's comfortable with myself. I try to save them from the hate so wildly raising hell. Cause I'm the black sheep, white boy who doesn't hesitate to make a lot of fucking noise. I'm the black sheep, white boy, and I wouldn't change a thing if I ever had the choice. Cause the red's the color I bleed. Yes, we all do bleed red. I have to protect my family. That Scotland is too white, is Nigeria too black? Don't get your panties in a bunch, cause I have the right to ask. See, I'm the black sheep, cause I call it hypocrisy. And the media will give you emotions, but they will not give you honesty. Yeah, you have your feelings, but I have the crime rate. And I'ma shoot to kill if there's a danger my way. So I do not blame the cops, just the ones who are cowards, who hesitate to pull the trigger unless it is one of ours. Cause he's a black sheep, white boy who doesn't hesitate to make a lot of fucking noise. I'm the black sheep, white boy, and I wouldn't change a thing if I ever had the choice. Cause the red's the color I bleed. Yes, we all do bleed red. I have to protect my family. So I put my people to death.
help our people go free. I guess so too like to see. I'm just trying to help our people go free. I'm just like to see. You're too right. I'm just trying to see people go free. I'm just trying to see. I'm just trying to help our people go free.
Good evening, America. I'm Jason, and you are watching Jason Goes Political. For the sake of continuity, all financial gifts $19 or less will be read at the end of the show. $20 or higher will be read as soon as I see those financial gifts. And you may financially gift over at Entropy, which is up and running. Odyssey, up and running. Cash App, always up and running. The URLs for all three are in the description below. I hope everybody's having a good evening tonight. I can see we're going to have a very cozy little group here tonight. It's great to see all of you who could make it. Please share the URL with your circles of influence. That may even mean content creators that you would like to have know about me. And then maybe we'll be able to get more than a handful of people together for all of the work that's invested in making these things happen. And more importantly, the kind of information that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight is next level information. This is beyond what the idiots out there in the world share normally. And you'll finally, maybe some of you, or maybe the ones who are here, will already realize this. And then you'll be able to pass it on to all of the retarduses out there in the world that are not smart enough to watch something that benefits them, to learn from something that benefits them, but rather would choose an avatar out there to do their work for them. Isn't that nice? Why don't we go ahead and get started with the biggest item of the day, which is, and no one, I will tell you right now, no one has covered this well whatsoever. Everyone has it wrong. Every single person that I've seen or heard of has it wrong. So why don't we go ahead and get into this? Truth Cops on the Intercept article. Leaked documents outline DHS's plans to police disinformation. The Department of Homeland Security is quietly broadening its efforts to curb speech it considers dangerous. An investigation by The Intercept has found years of internal DHS memos, emails, and documents obtained via leaks and an ongoing lawsuit, as well as public documents, illustrate an expansive effort by the agency to influence tech platforms. I'm going to jump right out and say, this is not new, idiots. Everybody out there who's talking about this is brand new. Talk about their naivete that they would think that something like this is new. This is always happening. There are always these endeavors to encroach, to control. And I'm going to tell you all something. I'll be very straightforward with you. This idea about the dissemination, and I'm fine with saying that it's okay to doom document and doom dissect and doom divine, because you can take these things and then you can use them to begin a conversation with those people around you. You cannot combat information with information when your adversary is the controller of information. I figured this out a very long time ago, and maybe some of you have as well. In fact, I expect that some of you have as well, those who are here. But as you can see by the numbers of people who will turn up to imbibe doom documentation, doom divining, dissecting, they think that you can combat information with those who control information. This is actual genius. What we do is actual genius contest with our victimizer. Everyone else is twiddling around, and they will continue to be ineffective and to have the audiences of millions of midget wits. The work, much of which remains unknown to the American public. Does anybody remember? I used to get the newspapers. There would be the monthly newspapers, the bi-month. There were every 6 months there would be newspapers. There would be quarterly magazines. Long before the internet was robust enough to carry all of this sort of material, and people used to talk all the time. They would have these photographs in these newspapers of these giant arrays that the United States had built to monitor all communications at all time, to control that communication, to control the information passed therein. And there were names for all of these programs, named for these locales. This has been going on long before we were born. This came into clearer view earlier this year when DHS announced a new disinformation governance board, a panel designed to police misinformation. This myopia that I see, where people act like each time more information comes out about the control and dissemination of information, the manipulation of that information, and act like this is unbelievable. This is something brand new. They've never done this before. And in fact, a lot of very young content creators try to build up from their teenage years, when they started to notice things going on, up to the present, act like this makes sense. It's step A, then B, then C, when reality it's been beyond this before they were born. A panel designed to police misinformation, false information spread unintentionally, disinformation, false information and spread intentionally, and malinformation, factual information shared typically out of context with harmful intent that allegedly threatens U.S. interest. While the board was widely ridiculed, immediately scaled back, and then shut down within a few months after initiatives are underway as DHS pivots to monitoring social media now that its original mandate, the war on terror, has been wound up. Does anybody even remember what those giant arrays and servers and all of that kind of stuff that they used to show? Is there anybody here aside from me who used to get all those newspapers and quarterly magazines before the internet was robust enough to carry this information? Behind closed doors and through pressure on private platforms, the U.S. government has used its power to try to shape online discourse. According to meeting minutes and other records appended to a lawsuit filed by Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, a Republican who is also running for Senate, a discussion having ranged from the scale and scope of government intervention in online discourse to the mechanics of streamlining takedown requests for false or intentionally misleading information. I'm actually having a bit of a hard time. Kind of working through this information in this article. I got to tell you, because this is always at work, I'm like eager. I'm like chomping at the bit to say, or champing at the bit to say, that what I was able to discover so many years ago, the conclusion I came to so many years ago, and one of the drivers behind the Go Free method so many years ago, I'm going to go ahead and share tonight. I'm going to try to explicate to the best of my ability for those who are intelligent enough to understand. but it's the reason why we have success, and no one else will have any success. I mean, that's just I'm sorry that everybody can't be this intelligent. It's just the way it is. I guess God did it. I guess nature did it. But whatever it is the way it is. For sake, I swear to God, for sake, to deal with this level of stupidity. And then the people go around, the midget wits, and they want to celebrate the people who give them more of this garbage. And then like blind and deaf and Helen Keller level idiots grope against superpowers in the world, and they celebrate them as supremely intelligent. It is infinitely annoying. You fuckers will finally appreciate what I shared when it's too late. Not the folks who are here. Everybody else out there will finally appreciate when it's too late. Quote, platforms have got to get comfortable with government. It's really interesting how hesitant they remain. I mean, can you imagine the midget wits trying to figure out like this statement? Microsoft executive Matt Masterson, a former DHS official, texted Easterly, a DHS director, in February. So that was a text. So as you can see, you have the revolving door that you've always seen between government and regulatory bodies in the government and the private sector, ultimately just one and the same. There is, and we talk about it all the time, so people who have been going free for some time should be able to identify this relatively quickly as I'm sort of walking down the path in that direction. But this sort of, first of all, this sort of centralization of control is natural for the human animal. It's the way the human brain works. You know what else is interesting when it comes to the human brain is that since it is split in half, and that's something that I speculated about this back when I was in junior high school, finally saw a couple of articles years ago about scientists finally speculating the same thing, that we can only see things in binary terms because we have two hemispheres. What's going to end up happening now is that the vast majority of people who read this article, and they're going to be deductions that are going to be considered so profound, so intelligent, you really have to read what this guy said. You really have to listen. You really have to watch the video on what this other person said. And really what's coming out of their mouth is garbage. It's going to lead you to perdition, as it has always led folks to perdition. We can go back and get the names of the people who did it better than the content creators who are out there today, doom dissecting and doom divining all day long. We can go back to those folks as well. But why don't we do a little bit more reading as we slowly get a few more folks to come in here and to actually listen to and learn from actionable information that in demonstration contests and defeats the psychological warfare that is the anti-white narrative. In a March meeting, so ultimately saying, by the way, about this binary opposition is that people are going to look at like a social media. Now, depending on what this is, I'm guessing this is going to be more like basic bitch tier folks. And they're going to be thinking, who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? You can't think like that. And if you are not able to do this thinking on your own, then surrender it to someone who has the ability to do it and who's studying it, just like you would surrender to the doctor the surgery on your father's brain for a brain tumor. FBI official warned that the threat of subversive information on social media could undermine. Now, subversive, to whom? You have to ask the question, to whom? To what power source? To what entity, right? Or entities? Or more correctly, to what ideology? Because that's the thing that animates these living, shitting, eating, reproducing things we call human beings that are anti-white. Could undermine support for the U.S. government. According to notes of the discussion attended by senior executives from Twitter and JP Morgan Chase, stressed the, quote, we need a media infrastructure that is held accountable, as though the establishment media needs to be held accountable to anti-white standards. Can you see, like I can see, all of the erroneous deductions, all of the fallacies that are coming away from this for midget wits, midwits, and even uber midget wits. And we'll get into that in just a moment. The who's behind it, and to what tier might you fall? We do not coordinate with other entities when making content moderation decisions, and we independently evaluate content in line with Twitter rules. A spokesperson for Twitter wrote in a statement to The Intercept, of course, Bravo Sierra. There is also a formalized process for government officials to directly flag content on Facebook or Instagram and request that it be throttled or suppressed through a special Facebook portal that requires a government or law enforcement email to use. At the time of writing, the content request system at Facebook, and then they give the URL, is still live. DHS and Meta, the parent company of Facebook, did not respond to a request for comment. The FBI declined to comment. DHS's mission to fight disinformation stemming from concerns around Russian influence in the 2016 presidential election began taking shape during the 2020 election, and over efforts to shape discussions around vaccine policies during the coronavirus pandemic. Are you naive enough? And I don't think the folks here are. So this will be the people that you share. I hope you share this with, this today's live stream with. Are you naive enough to believe that this began with concerns over Russian influence? Documents collected by The Intercept from a variety of sources, including current officials and publicly available reports, reveal the evolution of more active measures by DHS. According to a draft copy of DHS's security review capstone report outlining the department's strategy and priorities in the coming years, the department plans to target, quote, inaccurate information on a wide range of topics, including, quote, the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic and the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine, racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature of U.S. support to Ukraine. Do you think this is going to change anything online? Because if you do, you're seeing yourself as extremely naive. You're being duped. You're being duped because this is taking place already. I'm trying to hold it in. I'm trying to hold it in rather than just get to the truth of the matter, because you know what the reality is? That the truth of the matter is just going to be a 2 IQ for most folks, too high IQ for most folks. That's just the reality. They're going to go right back to the let's combat information with our information. The challenge is particularly acute in marginalized communities. The report states, which are often the targets of false or misleading information, such as false information on voting procedures targeting people of color. So there you see. Now, is this new, or has this always been around for your whole life? Is it new? Is it worse? Or has it always been around this bad for your whole life? It's always been around for your whole life. It's always been this bad for your whole life. The inclusion of the 2021 U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan is particularly noteworthy, given the House Republicans, should they take the majority in the midterms, have vowed to investigate, quote, this makes Benghazi look like a much smaller issue, said Representative Mike Johnson, Louisiana, Republican, and member of the Armed Service Committee, adding that finding answers, quote, will be a top priority. How disinformation is defined by the government has not been clearly articulated. No shit. No shit. Really? Guess what? It's never going to be articulated. Guess what? It is asinine to complain about it not being defined and articulated, right? DHS justifies these goals, which have expanded far beyond its original purview on foreign threats to encompass disinformation originating domestically. There were already bodies in the United States targeting the information that is spread domestically. There always have been for your whole life. By claiming that terrorist threats can be exacerbated by misinformation and disinformation spread online. But the laudable goal of protecting Americans from danger has often been used to conceal political maneuvering. In 2004, for instance, of course, right? Of course, that's the case. Who all is here? I want to see if there's anybody out there. Does anybody out there, so this can be a little bit more entertaining for me, since we're going to have a nice little cozy group here today. What are other content creators saying about this? I know folks have been talking about it. I've seen a few of their videos. I've had, I sped read a few of the things that have been written about it. What have you seen? Is this something new? Are we going to have a real challenge to being able to communicate? Question everything, pointing out PatCon, Atlas Bear, any advice for Mark and his pals in PA now that an Indian is the prime minister? How do you explain to Vagues why that's detrimental to Western kind? Well, what matters about him is not that he's Indian. What matters is whether or not he's anti-white. And to my understanding, he is anti-white. That'll be very easy to explain to people. All of the Vagues out there, to be very easy to explain how an anti-white prime minister will be detrimental to the United Kingdom. Biospirit of the West, great to see you, good brother. Says, I'm here arranging rose blooms. Maybe this is what I need to do. Maybe this is what I need to do. I need to just hang out and look at what you all are saying to, I don't know, to justify all of the effort I put in, all of these other. I don't need to read. I don't need to look at what everybody is saying online for like my health, right? For like my benefit, right? Because I can already predict it well enough that I don't have to. I go through all of that so that folks can see, so that I know what other people specifically are saying. Victorian Time Traveler, I haven't really been listening to the other people all that much. You know, my time is kind of valuable, but I imagine it's the same as it's been since 2001 and before. Well, precisely. And before, and before, and before. I see the great Yiz, the Unifier, is with us. Ozark is here. Dear Carlisle Cockatoo is with us. Great to see you. The wonderful Fornull. Quitting Time. Roy is with us. Elaine Sabatino is here. And she's fired up. Fit and healthy at any age. Wonderful to see you, good brother. Looks like the great Fornull was here first. Looks like Franklin is here. Great to see you, brother. Pearl Lady. She said the ACLU actually posted about it on Twitter. Yeah, don't whatever you do, look at these complaints now that you're going to see coming out of the white sympathetic sphere about this. It does not matter. It doesn't matter. This entity at DHS doesn't matter. The other ones, they don't matter. And I'll tell you why it doesn't matter shortly. But you see all of them panicking. Should they be your leaders? Should they be the people you get your information from? They're always wrong. And here they're wrong again when it comes to this. And you just have no idea how wrong they are. Because they're wrong in various ways. Can you imagine complaining about one of the infinite number of endeavors to control information? We're talking about control of information from the very top of the pyramidal structure, the most powerful entities, all the way down to an anti-white at YouTube who decides to get rid of a channel because of something you shared, or an anti-white still at Twitter deciding to get rid of something you shared. This control of information. I'm going to take a look at a little bit more of it. I would imagine a lot of these other content creators are pointing out, quote, privacy, highlighting politics, ignoring that the, quote, racial aspect is actually number one, anti-whiteism. Well, precisely. See, the great Naturific is here. There's Starlet. Wonderful to see you as well. Artificer is here. The champs have shown up. The doers have shown up as usual. Great to see you all. Can you imagine? I mean, I'm going to share with you all something that very shortly here. I'm going to share something with you all about combating our victimizer. That is, it is, for me, it is stupefying that no one else gets this. It is absolutely stupefying. Go on and on and on, year after year after year. The inherently subjective nature of what constitutes disinformation provides a broad opening for DHS officials to make politically motivated determinations about what constitutes dangerous speech. No, that's not it. The track record has not prevented the U.S. government from seeking to become arbiters of what constitutes false and dangerous information. There's a premise here that it's unspoken and apparently unseen by all of these other people. Why are you all still talking about freedom of speech and free share of ideas when it comes to this tier of importance, this tier of retaining power, of controlling, and the ability to project that into the future? You talk about freedom of speech. You talk about the invasion of one's privacy on a much lower tier where our conversations and the share of information in our world intersects with those who are also on our tier. You are in two different universes. How is it these brains, they don't realize this? Earlier this year, Republican DeSantis signed a law known by supporters as the Stop Woke Act, because they're all imbeciles, which bans private company employers from workplace trainings asserting an individual's moral character or privileged or oppressed based on his or her race, color, sex, or national origin. Doesn't that just sound like anti-whiteism? Isn't that what we've already had? And where the applicant, this is a typical deceptive dog whistling done by Republicans. And we're going to finish up on that review and confronting this Republican in Leesburg while we are together today. In fact, we'll be getting to that sooner, I think, than later. Let me just jump through here because this is the stepped up counter disinformation effort began in 2018 following high profile hacking incidents of U.S. firms when Congress passed and President Donald Trump signed the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency Act, forming a new wing of DHS devoted to protecting critical national infrastructure. And so what's going to be the argument there? People are going to say, oh, well, you see, when you create, so to be like the libertarian tards will say, well, when you create more governmental control, then even though he intended it to be for good reasons, now it's being used for evil. Fools. This is where it's always been. This is how it's always been. From the outset, CISA boasted of an evolved mission to monitor social media discussions while routing disinformation concerns to private sector platforms. 2010, then DHS Secretary Nielsen created the Countering Foreign Intelligence Task Force to see. This is, I got to tell you, this is exactly, here we got some key takeaways. I'll take a look at that. What do we have more key takeaways up top? I didn't see another. Here we are, some key takeaways, some bullet points. And I'll read those, and maybe I'll read the rest of those, and then I'm going to go ahead and tell you. Because this is much more about intelligence on our side vying with the intelligence on the other side. And how one views this struggle, where one is, who one decides to endorse, support, and promulgate. This is much, much more. And in fact, this story is not what it appears to be. Because this story appears to be, and on its surface it is for so many people, a story about your privacy is being invaded. Your views and what information you would like to share might be deemed misinformation by someone else. And how do they have the right to decide whether or not that's information is disinformation or truthful information or harmful information, even if it's real and taken out of context? That is what the vast majority of people are going to be talking about when it comes to this article. And this article revealing from this lawsuit, one and associated endeavors to do this that are taking place at myriad times, not just in the form of new divisions and the like in any particular government bureaucracy, but actually in the hearts and minds of individual actors. Did they need a division? I ask you, did they need a division in the FBI to called Take Down Trump? Did they need a division in DHS called Take Down Trump? What really this article is bringing to light is that the reason why those who are white sympathetic, implicit and explicit, always lose is because they don't have a chance in hell listening to their content creators and leaders. Not a chance, not a snowball's chance in hell listening to these people who never get it right. You know why the anti-whites win? Because they have the money to find the actual very high IQ'd people out there, and then they put them to work for anti-white goals. That's why. But on our side, our leaders, our content creators that get the biggest audiences are the ones who speak to the lowest IQs, because that is the lowest common denominator. How do you expect to win? There isn't a chance in hell when that is the mechanism by which people are people have investments in what they teach, what they say, and what they lead you to do and not to do. When that is the mechanism, there's no chance. Key takeaway, though, and then I'm going to tell you what you all need to hear. Though DHS shuttered its controversial disinformation governance board, so there's a big piece of news right there. Well, at least this one was closed. Whew, we dodged the bullet. That is what a lot of implicit white sympathetic people, that's going to be a story for them. We dodged the bullet this time, but we got to stay on top of them when you're not doing anything. You're just going to go cast a vote like you take a shit. DHS plans to target inaccurate information on, quote, the origins of COVID-19 and efficacy. Okay, we read that. Facebook created a special portal. What a surprise. What a surprise. You mean that the social media in the United States would have a portal that allows the government to decide what gets shared on the platform? Really? Are they using it? Pass the sewing needle. Pass in our sewing circle, pass some of the sewing needles. Boy, whew, it's a good thing that they might not be using it. The work is primarily done by CISA, DHS sub-agency tasked with protecting critical national infrastructure. Fucking joke. DHS and FBI have several media entities are having bi-weekly meetings as recently as August. You know they're still having them. In my opinion, I don't have the evidence. I'm not watching. I will admit I don't have a video recorder. I'm not there taking notes. But you know what else? I'm certain right now that squirrels are hiding food. Yet I'm not watching them. I just know the behavior of squirrels. The FBI agent who primed social media platforms to take down the Hunter Biden laptop story continued to have a role in DHS policy discussion. So, it was just one guy. So here you have like a basic bitch tier is going to be, well, this thing was in effect and they were interrupting our conversations. They were steering our conversations, but thankfully it's been derailed. But there still might be a little bit of hocus pocus going on, a little bit of hanky panky going on. And so let's make sure that we vote in these Republicans, which are really just pressure release valves. That's all these Republicans are. They can't say your name. It's just a pressure release valve. They're not doing anything for you. Nothing. Your sole job should be to ruin them, especially the ones who claim to be the radical, the MAGA ones, the rebel ones, the ones that refer to the other seat placeholders as rhinos. Did I go by another? This is just getting into more of the detritus. Wait, before you go, on or about your day, ask yourself, is this part of the story? Consider what the world of media would look like without The Intercept. Yeah, it is not part of the story. If a foreign authoritarian government sent these messages, noted some, who cares who this person is, the former president of the American Civil Liberties Union, there is no doubt we would call it censorship. Okay. So there you have it. There you have like the basic, this intercept is obviously implicitly white sympathetic, bitch tier, and they're going to be going out there and saying this sort of, look at the double standard. If a foreign government were to do it, then it would be totalitarian. And our golly jeepers, where's Opie and Andy? Where's Leave It to Beaver? Where's Leave It to Beaver? Golly jeepers, we got to stop them from doing this. Let's get somebody in office. Let's get a lady in office. Record numbers of females. By the way, they were bragging on Fox News that are running for office for the Republican Party. Record numbers. Record. They're bragging about that. Golly jeepers, we need to get a female in there so that we can stop these people from acting like totalitarian governments. Where's Beaver? Where's Wally? Wally, come in here, Wally. Come in here, Wally. Are you supporting a female for office or not? Ridiculous. All right. So what do you really need to know about this? So I just told you the basic bitch tier. What's going to be the next tier up from that? That's going to be the explicit white sympathetics, right? That's going to be the explicit white sympathetics. And what are they going to do? They're going to terrify the shit out of you. They're going to talk about information and the control of information, and they'll complain like they're used to complaining. God, I can't stand another minute of it either. They're just going to endlessly complain like they're used to complaining. And they're going to say, it's not fair. It's not fair. Wally, it's not fair. And this is Wally with like and Beaver with like a pack of cigarettes rolled up. That's like the hardcore explicit white sympathetic group. That's as hard as it gets. They're just going to complain. It's not fair. It's not right. They're going to talk about who controls these different entities. Where really is the control? So let me break it down for you this way. The midget wit conclusion. The midget wit conclusion is this. No. This is more like the midwit. This is the midwit, and then it's the midget wits that eat this shit up in their millions. And they can be implicit and explicit, the midget wits in the white sympathetic sphere that just eat this shit up like there's no tomorrow. So you're going to have the midwits who are going to be out there, and they're going to be saying, the CEOs they're the ones in charge of these social media companies. And that's about as far as the midwit will go. The CEOs are in charge, and these CEOs that are in charge of these companies are being occasionally, but there's maybe this background smoke of these just Democrat is all they'll say. It's just the Democrats who will be pressuring them. They'll be pressure, although they might go, if it's a midwit who is one of these idiot name them types, then they might say, oh, it'll be the jaywalking CEO or the jaywalkers from a government that's making these CEOs who control these social media companies. Now follow me. You're gonna like this. You're gonna see what I've had to suffer for all these years. I'm gonna give you a little bit of suffering from the white sympathetic sphere so you can know what kind of stupidity I've been up against. So you can have the midwit who's going to say CEO's in charge. And if it's implicit, it'll be the CEO who is in charge of these social media companies. And then it'll be the government who is always trying. And so therefore we need to manipulate the information. Sometimes they get through. And then we find out about later that they got through for a little while and then it was cut down. But we need to stay abreast of this. So let's send a human being that has breasts to the government to make sure that with her titties, she's going to prevent us from having our thoughts manipulated by the government, by this evil Democrat government. That's like the midwits. All right, you got it? And the other take, as I say, for the explicit ones, the midwits are going to be like, well, it's the CEOs are in charge of these companies and they're jaywalkers, or they're being manipulated by the jaywalkers in government. Nuff said. Nuff said, idiots. All right, so then you have, and now let's see if we can do this. Then you have the uber midwits. And these are people who I will define the uber midwit content creators, organization leaders who are, and you know what? This whole, anybody out there who would say, why is Jason compare his product and service to the other products and services? Well, dumb, because this one works. Because I'm watching the hordes of imbeciles. Do you say that when on television you see over your whole life, in the newspaper your whole life, they'll say, our brand versus the other brand? Do you ever say, oh, golly gee, why are they comparing the brands? Sake. So you have the uber midwit, which is like, let's just say like 105 IQ, 110 IQ, content creator, organizational leader, white sympathetic sphere, implicit and explicit, right? This one's going to go much deeper. And this one is more like this is the one that really, the midget wits, they just gobble up. Let me just eat more of that shit. Let me have more of that shit that nothing can be done with, right? So they'll say, well, who runs the tech companies that are controlling speech? And of course, this is now it won't just be like the major tech entities. They'll include all of the different ones that you could possibly be on, right? Everything from, like Reddit to Instagram, and they'll name all of these. They'll name a whole list. So just imagine that they're present and they're naming like a whole list, a whole long list. It's like Facebook, it's Twitter, it's Instagram, it's Reddit, it's what are some of these others? eBay, it's all the way down. They'll be talking about it. And then they'll say, well, who controls it? Just like the midwits, they'll say, well, it's the CEOs. And then they'll say, who controls the CEOs? Well, the board. The board controls the CEOs, okay? And then who controls the board? It's the shareholders who control the board. And so it's the shareholders. But then who controls the shareholders? Well, ultimately, they're controlled by the advertisers, right? So because they advertise, they're going to have the last say. And then who are the advertisers then? Who are these people who are really in control? Well, those are the big businesses, because those are the ones who are buying the big ad space and spending the millions and millions of dollars. Well, who controls the big corporations? Well, with Wall Street controls the big corporation. So it's obviously controlled by Wall Street. And then who controls Wall Street? Well, it's the banks. It's the big banks that control Wall Street. And who controls those big banks? Not the biggest of banks, not the Fed, but who controls the really big banks? Well, then it's BlackRock. It's BlackRock, and it's what's the other one? Vanguard or whatever it's called. It's these big financial investing institutions. They're the ones who are really behind this. They're pulling the strings behind. And then who's behind that? Well, that's of course the Fed Reserve. Then the Fed Reserve is behind all of that. And who's behind the Fed Reserve? Who's actually sort of interwoven sort of in the whole thing, enmeshed in the whole thing, with all of their reward abilities, with all of their taxation of forgiveness, with all of the regulatory bodies that you can either so regulate something into death or deregulate and give its life. Who's that? Well, it's the government. And they're involved there with like the Fed Reserve. And then who's behind them then? Who's actually controlling those people? And who's controlling those big financial investment companies who are behind that too? Who are the people? Well, it's the people who own the Fed Reserve, the people who own BlackRock. They're the real owners. And then they work in this sort of interconnected way with all of just woven like this tapestry through everything in your world. Now, how do you fucking feel? What can you do with that? Do you want me to do that all day long? I used to talk like that back in the day. Before I got smart. Before I figured this out. Before I stopped listening to stupid people, I would submit my thoughts to stupid people. And then, of course, stupid people couldn't understand. Stupid people in positions of authority respected stupid people in the white sympathetic sphere. And they said, oh, no, no, no. What you've come up with, no. What you have to do is you need to talk about. So that's your uber mid-wit take. You name like the slew of the social media platforms. You name, and you know what else the uber mid-wit take would be to do? Would be to do like a short history lesson. Tell people like this article did. Well, it all began in 2005. No, it didn't. And then you just give a couple of, well, in 2006, and then in 2008, and then in 2009. And then your audience goes, oh, boy, that's really fascinating. This person really knows what they're talking about. This article has brought this out. Must have an eyelash in my eye. This article has brought this out in people in a big way. And it has been upsetting to me all day long because I have to see this recur. And it seems like there's no way to get beyond this tsunami of stupid. So there's your uber midwit take. And at the end of the day, how do you feel? In both cases, you have the midget wits that gobble this up like they've gleaned something of value. How do you feel? Can you compete? You've just been told, I mean, even if it's just the CEO, say, of Facebook, how can you compete with that? How can you compete with the CEO of one of these tech giants and that CEO being influenced or outright forced, his or her hand forced by these agencies that just spring up every now and again to control information? I'm going to break it down for you, the reality, in just a moment. How do you compete with just that? You don't. And that's why so many people just give up. That's why so many become they stay and they're content with just being observers of the doom documentation. They are content with that. Why bother? Why bother doing anything else? You cannot compete with the CEO of this major entity on which you have to speak, which you would like to speak, and that government, these little government bodies that spring up like little tiny weeds here or there, manipulating speech. You can't compete with that. That's at the midwit. The uber midwit makes the landscape even worse for you. How are you going to compete? And it actually engenders a neurosis in people. And I know you have met these people in your life. I know I've met a bunch. Alex Jones churns them out like you wouldn't believe. And they can go on just ad infinitum, naming all of these different entities out there that are controlling this and controlling that. And it's even above them and it's even above that. How do you compete? When you go out to your Saab or your Honda or your Ford at the end of the day, how are you going to compete with that? How are you going to compete with BlackRock? How are you going to compete with the owners of the Federal Reserve? You can't. And everyone knows that fundamentally. So they do nothing. They become observers. They become champions of a content creator that just essentially becomes like their avatar in the world. Then they go sing the paean of his or her praise to the high heavens about how great this person is, because they tell you all the doom, because they tell you everything that's going wrong. You cannot, are you ready for the truth? You cannot compete with the controllers of information with information. Do you need me to say that again? You cannot compete with entities that are like gods, that control information, that for them is the most important thing to sustain and grow their power on planet Earth. The control of that information. You cannot use information to compete with them. If you have questions while I'm here, you should ask them. Tag me as No White Guilt. Actually, if we stay under 100 watching, I'm not going to, I'll just do this and then we're going to wrap it up. So, I mean, if y'all want to share, you have shared, thank you very much. If you want me to stay around longer, then maybe share so we can get some more people in here. I know this already. I know it. I don't have to continue. I don't have to say it over and over. I figured this out over a decade ago. It was one of the main drivers of the Go Free method. The US government, the British government, the Russian government, the anti-white oligarchs in their infinite wealth. Information to them is their power. I don't mean their ability to access information. I mean their ability to control the information that arrives in your head, that is given to you to think. This is why I so successfully ridiculed these channels on YouTube and elsewhere that regrettably some of them, or I guess many of them still exist, where they want to give you this like global take. They want to give you on this geopolitical affairs, when really none of these people know shit. Not shit. All of the information that they have to bat around in their heads and make guesses with is provided, sanitized information, by the governments in which that information originates. Why do you believe, why did they believe that they would be given, they would give the best possible appraisal of what's going on in the world to their populations? They're going to give to their populations the information that sustains the power that the power holders wield. They're going to give to their populations the information that potentially will magnify the power that the power holders wield. You are talking about the most important thing to those who hold power. You have decided, when you want to compete with information, and especially this history revisionist garbage, good Lord, that is just information. You want to compete against our victimizer with their strongest suit. You want to compete against our victimizer not in a way that undermines the power of the victimizer, that isolates and then exploits a weakness in the victimizer. No, you want to go after what he is best at. How much intelligence does that take? How smart is that? I've tried to explain over the years to these people that this is like the arm wrestling champion of the world. The arm wrestling champion of the world, and you have to beat him scholastically. And instead of choosing an educational topic from school that he knows nothing about, in which you would have an easy victory if you were well educated, you decide to arm wrestle him. That's the equivalent. That's the same level of intelligence. Arm wrestling champion of the world, and all you have to do is maybe beat him in mathematics, beat him at literature, beat him at some science, like earth science, for example. That's all you have to do. But instead of beating him there, you decide to arm wrestle him. You decide to use information. It gets worse. It gets real worse. Because not only, I hope you're beginning to see how dumb that is. On both of those levels. Number one, it's the most important thing to the victimizer. The most important thing. Number two, it's the place where he's strongest, is on the information that is permitted to be available in his society. But it gets worse, because people in the white sympathetic sphere go out to different content creators for the doom documenting the information that they can provide them. Everything that is not permitted to be shared isn't shared. Do you understand? So when you think, I'm going to go over to this website and I'm going to get their 2 cents on the doom documenting that's taking place, that information has already been provided to them through various capillaries in these governments. They feed that information, and in this article, it even talks about it, into private entities. They've always done this. The rebel entities, the entities that are pushing back against the regime, supposedly. I talk about it in Go Free. I warn you to watch out for these news sources and the like that are really just establishment organs. But it's worse, because they will even take the people that you like, the people who might be genuine, and their news that they're sharing is all sanitized. Their doom documenting, doom dissecting, doom divining is all permissible. So I said to myself many years ago, how is it that the information that they control to sustain their power, our victimizers, and to potentially magnify their power, what is the bottleneck in that environment? Where does it have to take place? Where does that information become actualized? Well, it becomes actualized and tangible and real for everyone in a specific context. The information is crafted to fit a context. Where is that context, right? It's got to be crafted to fit a context, right? Because it's got to serve an objective, right? Where is that context? It's inside the minds of every person. They craft the information that has a use and a purpose in a context that exists in people's minds. What is the context then? Can that be a weak point? The context that's in everybody's mind is the psychological warfare that we call anti-whiteism. So we developed the remedy, the psychological defense for the psychological warfare that's waged against us. The Go Free method undermines the psychological warfare that is in everybody's heads. If that is undermined, then the control of the information is rendered void. It is rendered moot. It is nullified. You will never be able to control the information that is promulgated in a country on planet Earth. Not a hope in hell, ever. You will be able to complain a lot about being silenced when you want to maybe go a little this direction or that direction. And there are various levels here of the censorship, but you are never going to be able to say something that is truly going to challenge the sustaining of the power and the magnification of the power of the country that you are in, or any of the countries. You're not going to be allowed to share that information. So if you cannot broadcast information to challenge the country that you're in, to challenge the anti-white oligarchs, if you're never going to be able to broadcast that information to challenge it, and first of all, you would have to be able to broadcast it to the totality. And you would have to also deal, if you weren't using the Go Free method, you would also have to promulgate information that takes place inside of the anti-white narrative, that is the context, the matrix that's in everybody's heads. How well would you do with that? But you're never going to be able to produce information and promulgate it that America doesn't want, or Canada doesn't want, wherever you are. Anything that's going to challenge their power will be seen instantly as a threat to that power, and they will destroy you, not with some law, not with some, you will disappear if you are a problem. But it's never going to get there. It's never going to get there, because you'll never be able to speak to that many people that'll make you relevant. So the only means to contend with superpowers like this that are effectively gods compared to us. Some of them are not people, but there are people with wealth that make them mortal gods. Some of them are like corporations. Effectively, that's what the government is, in my opinion. You are not going to be able to compete with them for what is most important to them. Do you see how dumb this is? This is something that I came up with on my own. Thank you, God. Thank you, nature, whatever it is that gave me the ability to do this. But damn you for the curse. Because trying to explain it to midwits and uber midwits and midget wits has been a living hell, because they simply can't get it. So it doesn't matter. Do not ever complain. The place where we can complain about censorship is when it's close to us. And what we do, for example, here we try to promulgate the Go Free method to people. Anti-whites that are at the level of maybe anti-white social justice warrior type, sitting at a booth at YouTube or whatever it might be, they're making a decision that we are not anti-white enough. And so therefore, nothing we say will be allowed to get to anybody. We won't be allowed to have an audience. We can complain about that, because that's just like, that same social justice warrior anti-white is going to be getting into a Honda as well, going to be getting into a Subaru as well. That's the intersection that's very close to us. There is no use in bitching and moaning about the superpower of information control deciding what you're going to think. Deciding what information is going to be available. Deciding what information is going to be permissible to discuss. There's no use complaining about that, because they're always going to wield that power, and there is nothing in hell you can do to combat it. Nothing in hell. And even infinitely dumber when you tack on, now you see what I have to go through. You have this impossibility of contending with the most important thing to superpowers, that information that's out there and that's available. And then you compound the problem when you say, well, I'm going to do revisionist history. I want to talk about things that everybody has learned are set in stone. And I'm going to tell them that none of that is true. You can see how much dumber it gets. It's like you stack stupidity on top of stupidity. You stack air on top of air. And I want to make clear that I'm not angry at honest people making errors. There are plenty of over the years in the white sympathetic sphere, I saw honest people making errors, and I did not blame them for these errors until I described to them, exactly like I described you here, and then they decided to stick with their errors. Then I can blame them. So it doesn't matter. This article doesn't matter. The control of the information doesn't matter. The way that this can be useful to you, to me, is that we can bring this up with the average person. This is how you have to be, your intelligence has to be flexible. You can bring this up with the average person and say, well, did you hear about XYZ? And when you mention it, you used the key concepts, you use as many concepts from the Go Free method as you can to seed those things in the person. And if you can, you tell them about the Go Free method so that they too can go free of anti-whiteism. You introduce them to this channel, nowhiteguilt.org. These are the things you do to try to change the world that we're in. So you're going to be hearing, as you've heard, now since this article came out, folks continue to lament this like that's like lamenting that volcanoes erupt. What are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to put a cork in it? Are you going to climb up there and put a cork in it? That's a power beyond your comprehension. And it doesn't matter how many human beings you get out there, you're not going to be able to stop lava from coming to the surface of the earth. Even with our best technology available, you're not going to be able to stop it. It's going to come to the surface of the earth. That exercise over that power is tantamount to the exercise over the information that is shared. So remember, if there's anything you take away from this Jason Goes Political, it's this. You can control the information in society. And the information that is available in society is the information that they allow you to discuss. So is that information doing you any good? Is that information benefiting you at all? Indeed, the anti-whites will seed ideas and etc., events into conversation in populations that they find recalcitrant so that you remain ineffective forever. You go out there, you burn your reputation with some asinine claim. Just about everybody who shared more than maybe one of the sane things. Alex Jones didn't say a lot of sane things. But if you went out there, we all know these folks who shared a bunch of the wacky stuff that Alex Jones shared. Their reputations are cooked. Nobody will listen to anything they have to say. They could be holding a baby alien in their hands and say, look, I found a baby alien, and people won't listen. They see them as kooks. They see them as losers. They see them as dirty people that live in a van down by the river. Don't be that. Maybe you can understand my frustration. When you figure out something that is, for me, this obvious and folks continue to suffer from it no matter how much I share in various ways, well, then you could understand how frustrated I am and how when I go live to share this information about what's really going on, about how foolish it is to care about these things, we can't get 100 folks to show up. This MAGA cuckold channel that I saw earlier today with a female, of course. She's got like 200 and over 250,000 subs on YouTube, I think is what it was. Talking about this exactly the way that I just told you. How'd you like to have 250,000 folks watching me break it down as it really is. No, you're going to have this female, because everybody's going to go and they want to watch the female talk about everything that is totally irrelevant. Let me take a look at the chat here, see what you all are saying, because maybe there's somebody in there that would like to, maybe there's somebody out there who would like to disagree with me. First, I'll check out the, let's give it up. Let's give it up, please. And I want to get a genuine heartfelt thank you to some guy, 07, please 07s and raucous emojis, 50, let's be smart from now on dollars. And he writes, wise words as usual. Thank you. I really appreciate that. The sad thing is that if I were Jewish or Asian or something like this, you know, there'd be a whole slew of the conservative movement who would love they would eat up every word I had to say. But because I'm a white male with Germanic features, nothing. They want nothing to do with it. So I really appreciate that, some guy. It's going to take a lot. It's obviously going to take a lot for us to push through this. The Great Slots is in here with $5. So that's once again 50 US dollars from some guy. I deeply appreciate it. Slots with $5 financial gift says here, so many times I see doom documenting where people let the sources talk without editing translation, without interruption, and inside their own incarnation of anti-white narrative. My God, brother. Yep, I see that all the time too. Hundreds of times, he says, just copy pasting headlines. Yeah, precisely. Precisely. I agree 100%, Slots. 100%. Another hero in our community. I agree 100%. Yeah, they just pass it along. They just pass it along. Here's the information that we're allowed to think. Pass it along. Thanks, brother. All right, let's see if anybody, that's it on entropy. Let's see about, okay, Odyssey is blank. Question Everything says that YouTube censored a comment where he was critical about the idiotic naming them strategy. Maybe try to reword it. All right, let's see here. Oh, I'll check on Cash App. Wow, another true champion. An absolute man among men. No white guilt clips. 07s for that champion. $50 as well. $50. Let's heed intelligence. Let's be smart. Let's take the fight to our victimizer in an intelligent way so that we can recapture our destiny. God bless you, brother. $50 and with the 07 as well. Big salute to you, champion. And that's Cash App. I'll take a look over here at the live chat. Please tag me. Atlas says, did the soft bellies you interacted with while working on the Hill ever listen and understand what you were inoculating them with? No. No, they were the hardest core of dimwits. Just the conservative nerve center of the United States. And there were people who, and I can't say their names because it's in trust, but there were people who, as I articulated issues, would say that's true, but they would never say that publicly. But when it comes to like the Go Free method, for example, and those kind of strategies, no, they weren't interested in that. All right. White Pride says, long live Jason. Thank you so much. Imagine if Elon and the like use their wealth wisely for our people, the way all those billionaires do for their group. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, other racial groups, you see, they use their money because it's that awareness that Western kind just doesn't have naturally, that individual well-being, and we would have it to a greater degree than is exhibited today. Today, it's so bad because of the anti-whiteism and the poisoning. But what they do is instinctual, much more instinct, and that's my opinion. And maybe it's not true. All right, great to see Speedrunner, Dartomic Tech. Great to see the heroes showing up. Fit and healthy at any age. Cindy Bin. Is that Stevie? Went by. Naderific just took off. He went to bed, I guess. Somebody called Emma says, hatred of women is off-putting to me. There's no hatred of women here. Although normally what happens is women who like to dominate men, and you see this in the white race, any criticism of their domination, they'll call hatred of women. That's often the case. So I hope it's not the case for you, Emma. And this community is not anti-woman at all. And that is, again, the kind of claim that a woman who wants to dominate men would make. Men and women are like a puzzle pieces. They fit together physically, mentally, spiritually. There are duties that women, in my opinion, are better suited to, and duties that men are better suited to. Women who like to dominate men very often don't like to hear that. They're fine with saying that women do this or that duty better than males do. But when they hear that there are duties that men are innately capable of doing infinitely better, their feathers get ruffled. So it's very easy to identify and out these anti-white, by way of the anti-white doctrine feminism, women. It's very easy to out them because any criticism causes them to foam at the mouth like they have rabies. Women should not be in charge, in my opinion. We are in the state that we are in largely because gynocentrism and female domination of the household. The empowerment of women legally to be superior and socially to be superior to the men of our race. Everyone can see that. So when you deny it, no one thinks, oh, then maybe my entire world is somehow an illusion. Everyone thinks, there's a liar. Pearl Lady says, Why do you think so many people don't want to adopt the go free method and instead gravitate toward other white sympathetic ideas, cowardice and stupidity? Also, inertia, the way it's always been done. The cowardice is because they don't want to do anything. They want to be able to cheer on an avatar, and essentially be faceless. That's why people like Nick's boys, that's why they're like so fervent. They can cheer on an avatar. They can be faceless. They're treated like they're faceless. And then they don't have to do anything other than cheer him on and share the links for him and his name widely, put it everywhere, post it everywhere. That's what they do. But otherwise, they don't want to actually get out there and do anything. They don't want to make a change in themselves. They don't want to actively be participating in the change of our environment. When you are, here's another great example. When you're an athlete, you play a sport. You don't look at sports, at least while you're playing it, the same way you do if you can't play it. When you can't play it, then you invest in this vicarious way in the athletes, in the team. When you are an athlete of that sport, you are an observer of contenders. You want to be out there making it happen. You could never sit around and just applaud all day long. You want to get into the gym. You want to train. You want to be better than the other athletes that are out on the field that you saw in game whatever. So there's a big difference there. When you can watch and just sit on your ass and invest in an avatar, then you don't have anything to do. When you watch and you say, whoa, there's a big job out there and I have to do it, that means you've got to get in the gym. That means you've got to get to training. That means you have to swing the baseball bat 5,000 times each side so that you're ready for preseason. That's a hell of a lot of work, right? And of course, those things I'm saying for the efforts that we actually have to make in service to the recapture of our destiny. So that's why, I mean, you can really see the inertia is, well, it's always been done this way. So I don't want to think about it. I just want to keep doing it. And then just plain stupidity. They hear the articulation of what's really going on and they don't get it. They don't understand. So they think, well, I'll just keep pushing information, even though they don't get the information you're pushing is the information you're allowed to push. And even if you were to get hold of information you're not allowed to push, you wouldn't be able to get it to anybody. They would come get you. You don't have the means to spread it, and they would come get you. Understanding the intersection of where domination of information, which again, I'm going to point out, do you think the establishment would allow you to borrow their nuclear weapons or biological weapons or chemical weapons? The control of the information is infinitely more important than that. Do you think they would allow you to borrow their printing presses? The information of control of information, or the control of information is far more important than that to them. They're not going to give any of that to you, not even an iota. The intersection, though, where there is opportunity, is where the information is actualized, where the rubber meets the road, and that's in the context that exists. It's like a part for an automobile, for example. There's a place where the part goes. You can't just say put it in the glove box. If it's a part of your brakes, it's got to go on the brakes where it has to go. You can't just tuck it somewhere in the car and hope that it will still perform its job. The information has to become actualized and useful in a context. The context is in the heads of the people. What is the context? It is the psychological warfare. It is anti-whiteism. So the information that is you are allowed to have is crafted to fit into that context and is designed to benefit the controllers of information, to maintain their control and to potentially broaden their and deepen their control. So you're not going to be able to get them there. The only place you can contend with this enormous adversary, this is like the, for the Christians, this is like David and Goliath. You've got to find the one weakness. You got to find that weak point. If it's like lore from Europe, it's the weak spot in the dragon's armor. You've got to find the weak point and then exploit it. We have exploited it. We developed the Go Free method that continues to improve, that exploits the weakness. And that exploitation is by way of undermining the psychological warfare's ability to control the moral high ground principally, but there are other things. The conversation, the stream could go on for far longer than I would like it to. I mean, maybe if we had 10,000 show up, or I don't know, because it would still be, I could explain and explain and explain and explain. For those who are going to get it, they've already gotten it, that are hearing me. For the others, they're just going to sit there stupefied, shaking their heads because they don't understand. And then, I don't know, probably making up lies about me. Stevie J says, how is your day going? Well, it's kind of a surprising day. Kind of a surprising, seeing how many people are so just like drunk with this. My God, how dare they control the information? How dare they get out there? And fortunately, it collapsed this time. Sure. Axis Mundi says, Newsmax is live, and he alerted folks to No White Guilt being live. God bless you, champion. Much love for folks who are taking the initiative and doing things to expand the reach that we have and the work that we're doing here. God bless you. Yeah, circles of influence out there, folks. I really appreciate it. Elaine Sabatino says, I have to run to town, and my ride is leaving. I'll catch the rest of the replay, and good night, family. Well, big good night. Be safe. So Emma is apparently still with us, and she says she's in favor of women. I guess that means, since you are in contradiction to what I said, you're in favor of women dominating men. And so that's an illness. That's a sickness. And you're going to be, Emma, you're going to be torn in two, because biologically you're going to want a man to be a man unless you're really a misfit. But then your brain has been poisoned to think that you should dominate men, that women should dominate them. And that's a deep sickness that you've been brainwashed with to undermine the ability of Western kind to defend itself. Because women have been demonstrated, and we see this in all our lives, and we can, of course, this is my opinion. You know, the ear is against the door. So I'm sure it's not all women. That's honest. But nonetheless, women are far more likely to succumb to peer pressure than are men, in my opinion. Not all, but most. And they are also far more likely to want to meet halfway. Well, you can't meet halfway, and to placate and to appease. And that's, everybody experiences this. Everybody sees this in the world. And that's how we've gotten to this point in a very big way. Time traveler, I'll quote someone who belongs to a different biospirit. Where they are strong, avoid him and attack where he is weakest. Precisely. Thank you very much. So it looks like there's Donning Armor. Great to see you, brother. TJ is with us. Looks like Emma, somebody by the name of Emma is trying to make a bunch of problems in the live chat, saying that she's banned because she's a female. Just so happens that the chat is full of females, but I'm afraid it's women who are anti-white. That's a problem. Women who want to dominate men. That's a problem. She said she's happy not being a part of our community. Noek Eclipse is here. He says, I gifted an older friend of mine whose brother is a multimillionaire and former Speaker of the House your book, Crucible, today. Can you, this guy's like legendary, and he's still in the spring of life. God bless you, man. Holy crap. That is awesome. That is really fantastic. The screen leapt on me and it did it again. Okay, here we go. Axis Mooney says, I'm happier to help. Happy to help, brother. Thank you so much, man. Rory Herbert says, did you hear the Office of National Statistics in the UK announced last week they won't be revealing the ethnicity statistics from our 2021 census? What could be the reason? Yeah, we know that, of course, they don't want the, well, and here we're talking about information again, aren't we? Are they going to allow information to spread, the anti-whites in our once great United Kingdom? Are they going to allow information to spread that will challenge their power? Of course not. So then does it make sense to combat their information? You won't have the means, you're using the information they've given you. I mean, on and on, all that I've been talking about. That's why we have another enormous reason why we have to use the Go Free method rather than all of these other efforts that have failed. And Emma, I want you to go free. I want you to give up this anti-whiteism. I want you to get away from this idea of females dominating men and being in leadership roles. It's foolish. It's pernicious. You'll be a much happier person. Trust me. If you give up your anti-whiteism, if you'll give up this idea to dominate men, to dominate white men, it's disgusting. Actually, it's really disgusting. To me, to a real man of the West, the thought of a woman being a leader is such an affront. It is definitely one of the most disgusting, some of the most like viscerally revolting things. I feel disgusted at the thought of a woman being in charge. I don't send women to do my fighting. Real men of the West don't send women to do their fighting because you get your asses kicked. And then they're always like, well, but when fists aren't being thrown, fists are being thrown. Politics is warfare by other means. Fists are being thrown. People are doing the most illegal and degenerate stuff that you can conceive of. And then, even if we were to put this into some sort of laboratory where it's only an intellectual endeavor, if women competed with men in the jungle, even where you have the rules and laws of civilization functioning to whatever degree as we see in sort of corporate warfare, then women would be dominating corporate warfare, or they would be, if they were just as good at aggression and all of these other things that come into play, you would see maybe 50%. But in fact, you see zero. They have to artificially be inserted. And this is in my opinion. I'm sure CNN has data to say the exact opposite. I'm sure all of our anti-white oppressors have data that says the exact opposite. So the reality is we look out and we see men dominating. But if you were to even take all of that away and you were to just say, well, what if it were just intellectual? Like, what if we were to set up so that it was like highest intellectual scores and things like aggression and competitive nature and all of these other things are just taken out of the equation? Well, then you have these imaginary males defeating you all at Jeopardy and everywhere else. These women who were born men, and they're out there dominating intellectually. So you have the ability to be, as a woman, and to do things that a man can't do. You flourish best when he's doing the things that you can't do, in my opinion. So get over the anti-whiteism. You're going to be a happier person. Cool Papa J Magic makes a great point. Leading with courage is a masculine trait. We don't want to see our women being masculine. Absolutely. And they can't be. It's a really just, when they are like these like artificial half men, the simulacrum of men, it's just disgusting. Or simulacra of men, it's disgusting. It's ridiculous looking. It's comical. It's like right out of, the circus, right? It's like right out of the circus. And when you see these women that are running for office and everything, what do you see when they're talking about these things? You see a woman bitching. They're just like, it's just browbeating a man and finger wagging at a man. That's what it is. It's just complaining. I don't want to hear complaining. I know that we're not going to recapture our destiny by complaining, by shouting that it's not fair. That's not how we're going to recapture our destiny. So, but this is, so much of the public out there is composed of people who are suffering the same way that Emma is. And so, we have to deal with that as it arises. Archangel says, politics is absolutely warfare. The female politician you confronted couldn't even handle two men simultaneously asking questions. It was really just, it was really one at a, because neither of us talked at the same time. And cried that you were double teaming her. Yeah, and if Caleb hadn't said anything, she would have said something. She should have said, well, you've taken me at unawares, and I can't handle this. This is unfair, the way you have put me on the spot. And yeah, so you can see, that's a great example of seeing a difference. And you can't compare the current stock of males, of boys in politics, and say, well, there are your men. Those aren't men. That's like comparing the leopard that's out in the wild with the leopard that was kept in somebody's backyard in like a 4x4 cage, or I guess it would have to be a little bigger than that, by 6x6 cage, malnourished and everything. Well, there's your leopard. There it is. I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. All right, let me refresh this. Okay, looks like we didn't miss anybody on Cash App. Didn't miss anybody over on Odyssey. Didn't miss anybody over here on Entropy. Been going for an hour and 45 minutes. And with roughly 100 folks. So I guess that's going to be it tonight. I'm not going to bed. I'm definitely not going to bed, but it's later than you think for all of us.